All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling something that's, well, it's become kind of a big deal for SaaS companies, right? SOC 2 compliance.
Yeah, you see it everywhere now.
I feel like you can't go to a SaaS website without tripping over the term. But, what is it really? Why is it so important, especially if you're a SaaS company dealing with, sensitive customer data up there in the cloud?
Exactly. And it can get pretty complex.
Yeah.
So many moving parts.
Right. That's why in this deep dive, we want to cut through all that jargon, get straight to the heart of what SaaS companies need to know about SOC 2.
Exactly. We've got a whole pile of resources here, reports, checklists, expert opinions, everything from those nitty-gritty technical details of different SOC 2 reports to the bigger picture of why it matters so much for SaaS businesses in the first place.
Exactly. And the goal is to equip everyone listening with, a clear, practical understanding. We want to make this complex topic make sense quickly.
Yep. It's all about getting you the knowledge you need efficiently and effectively.
So we're going to unpack what SOC 2 is, at its core. Then we'll dive into why it's especially important for SaaS businesses. We'll break down those 5 key trust service criteria, and then look at Type I versus Type 2 reports. And of course, we'll go through the steps to actually achieve compliance, and just as importantly, maintain it, because it's not a one-time thing.
Exactly. It's a process.
And we'll touch on how SOC 2 relates to SOC 1 and 3 as well. But first, before we get too far in, just a quick word from our sponsor. Creating InfoSec policies from scratch can be, let's just say it's a real-time suck. But what if there was a better way? Check out GeneratePolicy.com. They've harnessed the power of AI to create this really cool tool that generates custom InfoSec policies in minutes. Yeah, minutes. And they're tailored specifically to your business, so you can be confident they're spot on and up to date. Give it a try, GeneratePolicy.com. Now, back to the meat and potatoes of SOC 2. I think for a lot of SaaS companies, the question is why? Why does it matter? What's the point?
Right. It's a good question. And it's really become, like you said, a leading standard. It's basically the way for SaaS companies to really to prove their commitment to data security, not just talk about it.
Right. It's not just a marketing buzzword.
Exactly. And that builds trust with clients. It sets you apart.
Makes you look good.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's just lay the groundwork. What is SOC 2? Like, in plain English, for someone who's maybe hearing about it for the first time.
Okay, so SOC 2 stands for System and Organization Controls 2. Catchy, I know.
Rolls right off the tongue.
It's basically a framework, right? And it's put out by the AICPA, that's the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. And what it does is it evaluates how service organizations manage, how they protect customer data.
Makes sense. So is it geared specifically toward cloud providers and SaaS?
Yeah, and that's what's important for you. It's really designed for anyone handling sensitive customer information online. Cloud providers, SaaS vendors, you name it.
So it's tailor-made for the way business is done now in the cloud era.
Exactly. And while it's not, legally mandatory in the same way as like a specific data privacy law, it's becoming more and more, essential.
Yeah, you pretty much have to have it.
Especially if you're dealing with sensitive data, like in healthcare or finance, those heavily regulated industries. Yeah. And you know what? A lot of larger enterprise level clients are just expecting it now. They won't even work with you unless you're SOC 2 compliant.
Makes sense. When you're handing over your crown jewels, your data, you want some assurances. So what are the benefits for a SaaS company? I mean, aside from just checking a box.
Right. Well, for starters, it really does boost customer trust and confidence. When a potential client sees that you have that SOC 2 report, especially a Type 2 report, they know your security practices have been vetted. By a third party, that's a big deal.
It's like a seal of approval.
Exactly. And that can give you a real edge over competitors who don't have it.
And it can open doors, right?
Absolutely. Especially in those highly regulated markets like finance and healthcare. And if you're thinking about going after larger enterprise clients or government contracts, SOC 2 is usually a requirement.
So it's a competitive differentiator.
Big time. And it builds those strong, lasting relationships with your current clients, too, because they know you take security seriously.
And you've got the receipts to prove it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dig into those trust services criteria. I think a lot of people get tripped up by this. It's like, what are these 5 things? So can you break them down for us?
Sure. These are the core principles of SOC 2, and companies get to pick which ones are relevant to their business. But there's one that's always there. That's security. That one's non-negotiable.
Got it. Security is the constant. What about the other 4?
Okay, so next up is availability. This one's all about making sure your systems are up and running when they need to be, according to what you've agreed upon with your customers.
So no downtime.
As much as possible. For SaaS companies, downtime means lost revenue, unhappy customers, you name it. It's a big deal. So having things like a solid disaster recovery plan, backups, redundancy, strong network security, all of that comes into play here. And here's a key takeaway from what we've read. Prioritizing geographically redundant infrastructure early on, that's huge.
So if one part of the system goes down, the other can take over.
Exactly. Minimize those single points of failure.
Okay, that makes sense. What's next?
The third criterion is processing integrity. Basically, is your system processing data accurately, on time, and only when authorized?
So the data's got to be good, right?
Exactly. And for SaaS, this means things like data validation to catch those errors early on, detailed logging so you have an audit trail, and real-time monitoring to keep an eye on those critical data flows.
And I'm guessing automation plays a role here too.
Definitely. Automating those controls as much as possible helps to minimize those human errors.
Okay, so you've got security, availability, processing integrity. What's number 4?
Confidentiality. It's all about keeping sensitive information under wraps, protecting it from those unauthorized eyes. Think encryption. That's like scrambling the data so even if someone gets in, they can't read it.
Right, like a secret code.
Exactly. And that applies to both data at rest, sitting in your databases, and data in transit, moving across the internet.
Makes sense.
And then you've got things like strong access controls, making sure only authorized users can get in, good authentication, and audit trails to track who's accessing what.
Right, so it's about having the right locks on the doors and knowing who's coming and going.
Exactly. And finally, the fifth criterion is privacy. This is about handling personal information responsibly. Obtaining consent before you collect it, limiting what you collect to only what's absolutely necessary, keeping tight restrictions on who can access it and how they can use it, and having a secure process for getting rid of it when you no longer need it.
So it's about respecting user privacy at every stage of the data lifecycle.
Exactly. And remember, while security is always a given, you choose the other criteria based on what your SaaS offering does, what your customers need, and the commitments you've made to them.
So it's tailored to each individual company.
Got it. Now let's tackle Type I versus Type 2 reports. I feel like this is where a lot of people get confused. What's the main difference?
Yeah, it's a common point of confusion. The big difference is the time element and how deep the assessment goes. A Type I audit is like a snapshot. It looks at your controls at one specific point in time.
So it's like, are the right things in place right now?
Exactly. Are the controls designed properly to meet those trust services criteria? And are they actually in place, configured the way they should be? It's a point-in-time assessment.
So the auditors are basically checking your homework, making sure everything's in order on that specific date. Exactly. They look at your documentation, talk to your team, see how your systems are configured at that moment. And then they say, okay, as of this date, the design and implementation of your controls look good.
Yeah.
But it doesn't tell you how those controls have been working over time.
Got it. So Type 2 takes a longer view.
Right. Type 2 goes much deeper. It's not just a snapshot. It looks at how your controls have been operating over a period of time, usually somewhere between 3 and 12 months.
So it's more like a movie than a snapshot.
Exactly. They want to see that your controls are not just designed right and in place, but that they've been working consistently, effectively over time. So they'll be looking at things like your system logs, access records, how you've dealt with any security incidents.
So they're checking if you're actually doing the things you say you're doing.
Right. And because of that longer evaluation, a Type 2 report is a lot more trustworthy. It gives more assurance to your customers and your partners.
Makes sense. If you can show that you've been doing things right for months, that's a lot more reassuring than just saying, well, on this one day, everything looked okay.
Right. So a Type I report can be a good starting point, especially if you're new to SOC2, but you really want to aim for that Type 2 eventually. It just gives you that much higher level of assurance.
Yeah, Type 2 is the gold standard.
Definitely.
We've got this handy table here summarizing the key differences between the two. Type 1, point in time. Type 2, 3-12 months. Type I focuses on design and implementation. Type 2 design, implementation, and operating effectiveness. The evidence examined for Type 1 is limited to that specific point in time, whereas Type 2 involves digging into lots of historical data. Type 2 offers a much higher level of assurance, but of course it takes more effort, more resources to get there. But that extra effort translates into stronger assurance for your customers, it's valid for a longer period, and it just looks better overall.
Yeah.
It can also be the difference between getting that big enterprise contract or not.
That's a great summary. Type I sets the stage. Type 2 proves you can keep the show running.
Okay, so let's say you go through all that, you get your SOC2 report. Are you good to go? Or is there more to it?
Oh, there's definitely more. SOC2 isn't a one-and-done thing. It's an annual commitment. You've got to keep at it to make sure those controls stay effective and keep meeting those trust services criteria.
So maintaining SOC2 is an ongoing process. Okay, what are the key steps to making sure you stay compliant year after year?
Well, first off, plan ahead. Schedule your annual audits in advance.
Don't wait till the last minute.
Exactly. Especially for those Type 2 audits that require collecting evidence over time. Get a qualified auditing firm on board, set a clear timeline, and make sure everyone in your organization knows what's happening and what their role is.
So communication is key.
Absolutely. And then you've got to do regular risk assessments, at least annually, but ideally more often if things change.
Things are always changing.
That's the truth. Anytime your business grows, you adopt new technology, or even when the threat landscape out there shifts, you need to reassess your risks and vulnerabilities. And don't forget about third-party risks.
Right, your vendors, your partners, they can be a weak link too.
Absolutely. Make sure you're evaluating their security practices too.
Makes sense. What else?
Keeping your policies and procedures up to date is crucial. Review them at least annually and update them as needed. Those documents need to reflect any changes to your tech, your data handling practices, or any new regulations that come into play.
All right, they're living documents, not just something you dust off once a year for the audit.
Exactly. Yeah. You also need to do regular access reviews. This ensures that you're following the principle of least privilege, meaning people only have access to the information they absolutely need to do their jobs. If someone leaves the company or their role changes, you need to revoke their access promptly.
Minimize those insider threats.
Exactly. And to address external threats, you need to test your incident response plans. Run those simulations, tabletop exercises, whatever you need to do to make sure your team knows how to handle a security incident if one occurs. And document those lessons learned. Always be improving.
Always be learner.
Right. Vulnerability scanning is another big one. Do those scans regularly to find and fix any weaknesses in your systems before someone else can exploit them. And use those continuous security monitoring tools to spot anomalies and potential threats in real time.
So always be vigilant.
You got it. And throughout the year, make sure you're keeping detailed evidence of your control's effectiveness.
Show your work, as they say.
Right. Gather those logs, those audit trails, those reports, everything you need to prove that your controls are working as intended. And it's all got to be in line with your security policies. Oh, and another thing, review your data management practices regularly. Make sure you're handling sensitive data securely every step of the way, from collection to storage, processing, and even disposal. And make sure you're using encryption both when the data's at rest and when it's moving.
Encryption, encryption, encryption.
Exactly. And if your monitoring or risk assessments turn up any issues, risks, gaps in your controls, you need a plan, a remediation plan. And document it all. And to make life easier, there are lots of tools out there now that can automate a lot of these processes.
Right, like for evidence collection, monitoring, reporting.
Exactly. Automation can really lighten the load and help you avoid those manual errors. And finally, talk to each other. Get your IT team, your legal team, HR, DevOps, everyone involved in this process. Make sure everyone's on the same page. You don't want silos forming and hindering your efforts.
It sounds like a lot to keep track of.
It is. But it's essential in today's world.
Okay, so we've talked about SOC2, but you mentioned SOC1 and SOC3 as well. Can you explain how those fit in for SaaS companies?
Sure. So all three of these are SOC reports, but they serve different purposes. SOC1, that one's specifically about the controls that are relevant to your client's financial reporting. So if your SaaS offering directly impacts your customers' financial statements, like if you process their payroll or handle their financial transactions, then a SOC1 report might be something you need to look into.
So it's all about those financial controls.
Right. And the main audience for those reports is usually the user entities of the service organization, their external auditors, and anyone involved in financial reporting internally. It gets into the nitty-gritty of those financial processes, and those reports are confidential, shared under non-disclosure agreements.
Got it. And just like with SOC2, there are Type I and Type 2 SOC1 reports, right?
Exactly. Type I is a point-in-time assessment of the design, and Type 2 looks at the design and operating effectiveness over time.
So, similar concept, but with a financial focus. What about SOC3?
SOC3 is a bit different. Think of it as a public-friendly summary of your SOC2 report.
Like the Cliff Notes version?
Yeah, kinda. It gives a high-level overview of your controls related to those 5 trust services criteria, but it doesn't include all the technical details and the testing results that are in the full SOC2 report. And because it's meant for a broader audience, like potential customers or just the general public, it's okay to share it widely.
So it's a marketing tool.
Exactly. A good way to show everyone you're committed to security.
And you have to have a SOC2 Type 2 report to get a SOC3, right?
Right. There's no Type I for SOC3.
We have another helpful matrix here. SOC1, financial reporting, SOC2, trust services criteria, SOC3, public-facing summary of SOC2. The audience for SOC1 is financial stakeholders, SOC2 is for clients and auditors, and SOC3 is for everyone. The level of detail is really high in SOC1. It gets into the technical specifics in SOC2, and then SOC3 keeps it high level. And for accessibility, SOC1 and 2 are private, but SOC3 is public. Both SOC1 and 2 have Type I and Type 2 reports, but SOC3 is based on a completed SOC2 Type 2 audit. This table really lays it all out clearly.
It does, and I think for most SaaS companies, SOC2 is really the main focus. It's about demonstrating the security and reliability of your services beyond just the financial aspects. SOC3 can be a useful addition for broader communication, but SOC2 is the core.
Okay, so let's say a SaaS company decides, all right, we need to get SOC2 compliant. What are the steps they need to take to prepare for that first audit?
All right, first things first. Figure out what type of report you need, Type I or Type 2. That depends on what your organization needs, what your clients expect, and how much time you have. Then you have to define the scope of the audit. Choose which of those 5 trust services criteria you're going to focus on.
And you'll always have security in there.
Always. And you pick the others based on your services, your customers, what's relevant to your business.
Makes sense.
Next, do a thorough risk assessment. Figure out where your vulnerabilities are, what risks you need to address. This will help you focus your efforts on the most critical areas.
Prioritize.
Exactly. And then I highly recommend getting a readiness assessment. It's like a pre-audit. Bring in an independent auditor, let them take a look at your environment, find any weaknesses before the real audit. That way you can fix any issues before they become problems.
Like a practice run.
Exactly. After that, do a gap analysis. Compare your current controls to what SOC2 requires and see where you need to make changes. Then remediate. Fix those gaps. Once you feel like you're ready, find a good auditing firm. One that's AICPA certified and has experience with SaaS companies in your industry. And then, the big push. Get everything ready for the audit. Gather all your documentation, all the evidence you need to show that your controls are in place and working.
Sounds intense.
It can be. But it's important to remember, SOC2 isn't a one-time thing. You need to set up processes for continuous monitoring and maintenance even after you get that report.
So it's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly.
All right, so are there any common mistakes or pitfalls companies should try to avoid, things that can trip people up?
Oh, definitely. One of the biggest mistakes is underestimating how much work is involved.
Yeah, it's not a small undertaking.
No, it's not. It takes a lot of time and resources from people across different parts of the organization. And another mistake is not clearly defining who's doing what.
Right. Who's responsible for which controls and tasks?
Exactly. Without clear ownership, things can fall through the cracks. And don't forget about communication with your auditor. Be open, be honest, be transparent. They're not the enemy. They're there to help you validate your controls.
And don't just treat the audit as a box-checking exercise.
Right. The goal here is to actually improve your security, not just to get a piece of paper.
It's about building a stronger foundation.
Exactly.
So let's say you go through the process, you get your SOC2 report. What's the best way to use it to your advantage?
Well, it's a valuable asset. It shows your clients, your partners, that you're serious about security, that you've gone through this rigorous independent assessment. It builds trust. It gives you a competitive advantage.
It's proof that you're walking the walk.
Right. So share it. Share it with your current clients, potential customers, partners, obviously under the appropriate confidentiality agreements.
Of course.
And shout it from the rooftops. Put it on your website, in your marketing materials. Let everyone know you're SOC2 compliant.
Wear that badge of honor proudly. Okay, final question. What are your top tips for a successful SOC2 audit, both the first time around and on an ongoing basis?
All right. First off, get your leadership on board. Make sure they understand why this is important and that they're visibly supporting the effort.
Top-down buy-in is essential.
Absolutely. And you need to build a security-first culture in your company. Everyone needs to understand that protecting data is a priority.
It's not just IT's job.
Right. It's everyone's responsibility. Documentation is key. The more detailed your policies and procedures, the better. Keep those records of your controls organized and up to date. It'll make the audit so much smoother. And remember, those regular risk assessments and vulnerability management, those are essential for staying ahead of the game.
Proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. Talk to your auditing firm early and often. Make sure everyone's on the same page, that you understand their expectations. And finally, don't be afraid to learn and grow.
See it as a learning opportunity.
Right. Use the audit to find areas where you can improve and continuously strengthen your security posture.
Excellent advice. It's clear that SOC 2 compliance is a commitment, it's a lot of work, but the benefits are undeniable.
No doubt about it.
Okay, one last thing. Staying on top of global compliance can be a real headache. There are so many policies to keep track of, but there's a solution, globalcompliancemap.com. They've got this really cool visual tool that maps out over 285 compliance policies. It's like having a cheat sheet for global compliance, so easy to use, and it really simplifies a complex landscape. Check it out, globalcompliancemap.com.
And to wrap up our deep dive on SOC2 for SaaS, I think it's safe to say that this framework is now essential for demonstrating a commitment to data security. It's how you build trust in the cloud. We've covered the basics, the 5 trust services criteria, the different types of reports, how to maintain compliance, how to prepare for an audit, and what to do with that report once you get it. This knowledge is critical for SaaS businesses operating in today's security-conscious world.
And remember, this is just the starting point. There's a lot more to explore, and we encourage you to dig deeper into the aspects that are most relevant to your business.
Definitely.
One last thought to chew on. As the SaaS world keeps growing and those cyber threats keep getting more, creative, how will adaptable frameworks like SOC2 continue to shape the future of trust between SaaS vendors and their customers? It's something to think about.
Definitely a lot to consider.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And before we go, let's talk about staying in the know. The world of global compliance is constantly changing, right? New policies, new regulations, it's hard to keep up, but that's where ComplianceHub.wiki comes in. They've built this comprehensive knowledge base that covers everything you need to know about global compliance. It's like having a team of experts at your fingertips. Check it out, ComplianceHub.wiki. And that's all for today. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.